Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Don't Risk It podcast presented by VFIS Client Risk Solutions. This program focuses on the exposures our clients frequently encounter and discusses some potential solutions to help reduce these exposures. I'm your host, Chris Rogers with VFIS Client Risk Solutions, and joining me on the program today is Melanie Kempf from Lancaster EMS in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Melanie is joining us today to discuss a life-altering event and the advocacy as a result of this event that has changed our path in emergency services. Melanie, I want to thank you for joining me today, and it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get started with, how long have you been involved with emergency services?
So in total, I've been involved with emergency services for about 10 years. I started off with firefighting, got into EMS approximately 3 years later. So I've been in EMS for about 7.
So what led you to go into EMS?
So my dad is a retired firefighter medic, and my mom was one of the first ambulance captains out in Delaware County at Concordville. She was one of the first PHRNs, and it just runs in the family. So
I'm going to say a true family affair that
yeah.
We don't see that often as much anymore. Where, mom or dad might have been a firefighter or a medic, and then the kids go on to do it. So it's cool to see that lineage is still going on in some parts of the country.
It's amazing. My mom actually was pregnant with me, hauling the rescue engines and ladder trucks around. So I think I was just born to do it.
Oh,
So.
You were hearing lights and sirens, or hearing sirens in the womb. So I guess it was a calling for you. So, we talked about in the opening, that there was a life-altering event that you had that, kind of changed your path in emergency services. Can you tell me a little bit and the listeners about February 12th, 2022?
Sure. So I was on a medic unit in the city. We were Medic 6-7. My partner and I were dispatched around 14 hours for a Class 2, which is an emergent but not life emergent, unknown medical person. It said male had glass in his foot. So we went down the road, arrive on scene, and there's this group of kids, and see this guy who definitely does not fit in with these kids. He looks a little older, moving around a little weird, and kind of figured out it was him. The kids were telling us, I think he's on drugs, and he kept saying he had glass in his foot. There was a language barrier, but we were able to kind of de-escalate the situation at first and talk him into the ambulance. He got in, got a little weird, thought we were police, I think, just due to our uniforms. And we kept assuring him, hey, we're just EMS, it's okay. Get him on the litter. Police show up. There was 3 at first. 2 of them ended up leaving because it seemed like everything was going to be okay. The patient started escalating. My partner and I looked at each other, trying to put a blood pressure cuff on, and he was like moving around weird, looking around, and she said, I'm going to call and get orders for sedation, because we could tell we're now getting to a point where this could become volatile. This is an unsafe situation for myself, my partner's self, and the patient. So as my partner was outside talking, I was trying to get information. The officer that stayed Spanish speaking, so he was trying to interpret, and he was like, hey, he's just repeating himself and something's off. I said, okay. So partner comes in, make a game plan, draw up ketamine. We're going to lift up that left sleeve. We're going to hold him. We're going to dart him, and we're going to restrain, and then we'll head to the hospital. Very routine, something we do all the time. Went and pulled down on his shirt, nothing. So we're like, okay. My partner said, well, it's time. Let's hold him down, you and the officer. So I was on his right, officer was on the left. We go to hold him down, and I kept telling him, it's okay. Like, it's all right. We got you. He kangaroo kicked the officer into the corner of the ambulance, and I was trying to hold on to him. He was punching and kicking, and he just kept going, and I was trying to hold him, and then suddenly I felt a burning sensation in my abdomen. And I was like, I don't know what that is. That feels weird, but I'm going to keep going. And next thing I know, I saw this hand motion of like a stabbing. And I looked and I saw the knife and I yelled out that he has a knife. Officer comes around, and as you know, the sides of the ambulance between that litter and bench seat aren't that big. So my boots are, of course, stuck. And he's just continuously trying to swing and stab me. My partner pulled me to the back, and as she did, the gentleman reached into the officer's gun holster and fired off the gun. Gun was fired off. The bullet actually hit where I would have been standing. So if it wasn't for my partner, I would have been shot as well. We egressed out of the ambulance, hit the emergency button, yelled for more police. A bunch of EMS showed up, and I looked and I had a laceration to the right side of my abdomen. Bleeding was controlled at that point. I actually still have the scar and went to the hospital, and
I'm guessing that adrenaline kicked in when you said you felt burning, but didn't know what was happening because of the situation that was going on. Just kind of masked some of that. Probably, I'm guessing that didn't feel too good to get a blade in the abdomen. So.
100%. I had no idea until I saw, because you just don't feel anything. And thankfully, it wasn't deep enough, but very lucky, very lucky to still be here. So
a lot of it was a very, very bad thing, but a lot of events that did play in your favor. Out of the way of that bullet, didn't go deep enough because a stabbing could have hit something and could have been a far worse consequence. Now, with that being said, how did this event change your perspective on providing EMS?
Sure. So I think a lot of people normally would say, well, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, I want to continue. I talked to my parents and I said, I still want to do EMS. I don't want this to deter me from something that I truly love and enjoy. I love taking care of people. I love serving my community and being there for people on their worst days, even if that is a sacrifice to my physical or mental well-being. I want to be there for the people. So we went to a CISM, and I remember they said, you're going to go to therapy. You're going to do 3 sessions with this person. I said, okay. So very hard to open up originally for me. I was normally very closed off. You just keep it to yourself. By the 3rd session, this lady had me opened up, talking and getting through some things. And she said, well, your insurance doesn't cover it. But good luck. I said, okay. So mind you, I'm in the middle of medic school, so I have the stressors of that, working a full-time job, working a part-time job. And I went back to Bob and I said, this isn't right. We need to fix this. And him, Dawn, Bobby, we all got together and we said, how do we fix this? And they really worked on getting the CISM team correlated with somebody who also is involved in our insurance. So nobody had to go through that again. And I think it's really opened up for people to have an event if they do, and then they can go and they can still continue with that person, because a lot of us it's hard for us to go to multiple people and talk about that event. So,
well, with the way that you're telling the story, it sounded like those therapy sessions did help with opening up, because this is something that could be very easily internalized.
Yes.
Versus talking and sharing the story, which is a terrible event, but a good story to share, because there's probably, unfortunately, more events that are going to happen or have happened like this in emergency services. You talked about, you went to the leadership of your organization. How did this event motivate change within them? How did they feel about, making some of those changes?
Sure. So Bob was very open to the idea of let's make change. How do we get better? This is the first time something like this to this extent has happened at Lancaster EMS, and how do we fix this? So we were having weekly meetings at that point and talking and just kind of correlating things, and Dawn really was invested, and we all came to the conclusion, let's figure out how do we get somebody in our insurance to say, yeah, you know what, you can put me as part of the SISM. We will do these sessions. Found a guy in Harrisburg who hones in on first responders and their mental health. He deals with the state police, he deals with all of EMS, so he understands, and that's another part. A lot of people don't understand what we do and the things that we see and endure every day. So to have somebody who is in paramedicine, who's paramilitary, and now can talk to us and help us, I think is huge.
And you mentioned day-to-day type things. There are day-to-day scenarios that might need some of this advocacy that aren't as severe as yours. I mean, because that's not a thing that's going to happen every day. But there are smaller, trigger things that could happen in the field on a call, whatever. There are more people in the department that could benefit through this advocacy that they put in place.
I agree. I think the things that we see, not just that what we physically do, but what we see on a day-to-day, I think it's important to get that help. I think we're really moving away, at least here at this company, from the stigma of you keep it to yourself. If you can't handle it, get out. We're now like, how do we help you? Because we don't want you to, harm yourself or just go off the deep end. How do we keep you mentally intact? So when you do retire, you do leave the profession, these nightmares and the PTSD isn't as huge of a problem as to where we're helping you, and let's bring this in and let's help each other, because the nightmares were what was getting me. I could not sleep. I could not close my eyes without seeing that incident happening over and over, and it was just very taxing until he went to prison. Every night I was worried I was going to run into him while I was working, because he was out on the streets. He was out there, and I'm like, how can I'm going to be responding to calls. What if I do run into him again? Is he going to do it? Is he going to be successful in what he attempted to do before? So,
especially with how easy it is to find people now with so much information online, it's rightfully so to be have some fear of someone trying to some reprisal, essentially, yes, for what they know that they are probably going to spend a little bit of time in jail for. So I can see where that fear would reside.
Yes.
So how can emergency service agencies and providers better prepare themselves for events like yours?
So I think talking about the mental health, I think that's a big step, and for providers and for management to be open to the idea of getting the help. I think going and talking to our local municipalities, going and talking to government officials and saying, hey, we need to advocate for EMS. We need to advocate not for just their physical well-being, but their mental well-being. We are going out here and we are going and seeing traumatic events that on a day-to-day basis that a normal person might see once, maybe twice. We're seeing, possibly on a week basis, we're seeing like 20, 30 traumatic events. So our brains are altered. We need somebody to advocate for us and to push the limits and say, hey, we need to help them. They are here for you on your worst day. So let's help them so they can go home to a safe and good environment and mentally and physically be okay.
And if the culture's been established in your department that, hey, it's okay to ask for help, it's not a weakness. It's actually a strength to let people know that you have a vulnerability and you might need some help with it, and that will hopefully spread where other people will see that this is a place where we can be open and it's not frowned upon and we get some help.
Yes, we're getting rid of the stigma, and we're going to fight for our people, because this company doesn't run without their providers. And if you advocate for your providers and you do whatever it takes to keep them going, you're going to retain. And at the end of the day, when we get out of this profession, we can go home and hopefully we have the right resources, or we can go and not have these thoughts and it turns into something different.
Well, Melanie, I want to thank you for joining the program and sharing your story. It's very, very impactful and very courageous of you to hop on and share this information. So again, I want to thank you for your time and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for listening to the program and for your interest in VFIS safety resources. I want to thank Melanie once again for her time and information. Please consider subscribing to our program to stay up to date on new content releases. Also, if you like what you've heard, please consider leaving a review below. For more information about the many resources available from VFIS, please visit VFIS.com. And to submit ideas for future discussions, please reach out by emailing VFISriskcontrol@VFIS.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. The views, information, or opinions expressed during this program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Gladfelter Insurance Group, VFIS, and its employees.